she was kind and she cared. And she was very, I think in a way she unconsciously took a role as the woman of the house too. Diana was checking that curtains had been drawn or something, you know, from a very early age. And I mean, the saddest thing really was that I think after my mother left, you know, we were both quite traumatized. And Diana told me later on she could hear me crying down the end of the corridor and she couldn't come to comfort me because she was so terrified of the dark.
There's an island sitting in the middle of a lake at Althorpe House in Northamptonshire, surrounded by the trees Diana loved most. The estate has belonged to the Spencer family for more than 500 years, and that island is where Diana was laid to rest, not inside a royal vault and not in a public cemetery. She remains on Spencer land, protected by the Spencer family, under the care of her brother, Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl Spencer. That fact may sound like a simple detail from a biography, but it is actually one of the most important parts of this entire story. It is not just ceremonial. It is about control, responsibility, and access. Charles Spencer oversees the location where his sister rests. He also has authority over private materials connected to her life, including personal papers, home videos, and handwritten letters. Because of that position, he plays a major role in deciding who can help tell Diana's story, how that story is presented, and under what conditions it moves forward. He has carried that responsibility for nearly 3 decades. In early 2026, according to widespread reports across royal commentary and entertainment media, he reportedly used that influence in a way that sparked major discussion in both London and Hollywood. For years, the Sussex brand has been closely linked to Diana's legacy. Beyond streaming agreements, media projects, and business ventures, many observers have pointed to the connection between Prince Harry and his mother's public image as a key part of that identity. The idea often presented is that Harry carries forward Diana's legacy, while Meghan is seen by supporters as continuing elements of that mission in her own way. According to reports, that foundation may have just faced a major setback, and the reported development did not come from palace insiders or tabloid headlines. It reportedly came from within Althorpe itself. In this story, we'll break down who Charles Spencer is and why his views carry weight that very few people can match when it comes to Diana's legacy. We'll also look at what was reportedly proposed, what reportedly happened when the project was reviewed, how Diana-related branding has been used in recent years, and what this reported decision could mean for one of the Sussex operation's most valuable remaining media assets. To understand why this moment has generated so much attention, you first have to understand Charles Spencer and the position he holds. Charles Spencer is not some background figure in Diana's story. Many people view him as one of the most important living guardians of her legacy. He was her brother, her family, and one of the few people who knew the private Diana behind the worldwide fame. While the public saw a global icon, he knew the person away from the cameras and headlines. When Diana died in 1997, Charles Spencer stood before a massive audience at Westminster Abbey. In front of members of the royal family, political leaders, and millions watching around the world, he delivered a speech that would be remembered for decades. During that address, he spoke about the importance of ensuring Diana's sons would grow up with the compassion, understanding, and values that she cared deeply about, rather than losing those qualities within rigid traditions. The speech immediately became one of the most talked about public addresses in modern British history. It was emotional, direct, and impossible to ignore.
It's quite clear from the introduction that I sat in on the 19th September 1995. Everyone was going to be made untrustworthy. And I think that Diana did lose trust in really key people. This is a young girl in her mid-30s who has lived this extraordinarily turbulent and difficult time in the public eye. She didn't know who to trust. And in the end, when she died 2 years later, she was without any form of real protection.
It was not the kind of carefully polished statement often associated with major public events. Instead, It reflected strong personal feelings during one of the most difficult moments imaginable. What made that moment stand out was not just what he said, but where and when he said it. The setting could not have been more visible, and the emotions surrounding the event could not have been more intense. For many observers, it revealed a lot about how Charles Spencer approaches matters connected to his sister's memory and legacy. Over the years, he has built a reputation for speaking plainly when he believes something important is involved. According to various reports and commentary that circulated in early 2026, some believe that same approach may have surfaced again in a new situation that has attracted significant attention. There is another reason his role carries so much influence in this story. Charles Spencer oversees access to some of the most significant private materials connected to Diana's life. Althorp reportedly houses personal letters, handwritten diaries, home video recordings, and other items that have never been fully shared with the public. For decades, requests from filmmakers, authors, broadcasters, and researchers have reportedly been reviewed carefully, with access granted only in select cases. Because of that, every decision connected to Diana's archives tends to draw attention. Nothing appears to be handled casually. The materials are closely protected, and choices about what is shared and what remains private are often made with clear purpose and careful consideration. Now let's get into what was reportedly being proposed, because the background of this project is a huge part of the story. By early 2026, according to widespread industry reports, the Sussex media operation was facing growing pressure to deliver a major commercial success. The end of the Spotify partnership had received extensive media coverage, and much of that coverage was far from positive. At the same time, reports suggested that the Netflix relationship had evolved from the large-scale agreement that originally made headlines into a more limited first-look arrangement. What had once been promoted as a groundbreaking deal was, according to reports, operating under a very different structure. The lifestyle brand was also generating a different kind of attention than many expected. Instead of dominating conversations as a major cultural movement, much of the public discussion reportedly focused on individual products and pricing. The buzz existed, but not always in the way supporters may have hoped. Several content projects reportedly faced similar challenges. Reports indicated that the cooking series had not moved forward with a third season, while the polo-focused documentary did not create the level of public impact some observers anticipated. Again and again, the pattern described by industry commentators appeared familiar. A high-profile launch, strong media attention, and then results that were viewed as more modest than expected. For entertainment companies, that kind of performance can create added pressure, especially when large investments are involved. Expectations rise quickly, and so does scrutiny when projects do not become major breakout hits. Against that backdrop, the approaching 30th anniversary of Diana's death in 2027 reportedly looked like a major opportunity. Few public figures generate global interest on the scale that Diana continues to command. Her story reaches audiences across generations, making any major project connected to her legacy a potentially powerful media event. Prince Harry's connection to that story is, of course, deeply personal. As Diana's son, his perspective would naturally attract attention and give the project a unique viewpoint that few others could offer. According to multiple reports, Netflix was interested in developing a large, multi-part documentary tied to the anniversary. However, the reported concept went beyond a simple tribute to Diana. According to accounts discussed in royal commentary and entertainment reporting, the project was expected to explore perceived parallels between Diana's experiences within royal life and Meghan's experiences as a member of the royal family, creating a direct connection between the two narratives. In the reported concept, Diana was presented as the original figure, while Meghan was positioned as a continuation of that story. The central argument reportedly suggested that both women faced similar challenges, including intense media scrutiny, institutional pressures, and feelings of being unsupported during difficult periods of their lives. That comparison was said to be one of the key pillars holding the entire project together. But there was one major obstacle. For that narrative to carry maximum weight, reports suggested it needed more than simple approval from Charles Spencer. It required his active participation and visible support. His involvement would have added a level of credibility that few others could provide. The real prize was reportedly access to Althorp itself. The house, the archives, the lake, the island where Diana rests, and Charles Spencer appearing on camera were all believed to be critical pieces of the project. If he publicly supported the comparison, many viewers would likely see that as a powerful signal that Diana's own family accepted the connection being made. Without that endorsement, the situation looked very different. Instead of having the backing of Diana's closest relatives, the project would face questions from critics who might point out that the person with perhaps the strongest connection to Diana's personal legacy was not supporting the comparison being presented. According to reports that later circulated through royal commentary and entertainment discussions, Charles Spencer reviewed the proposal and allegedly reacted with 4 words. "Is this a joke?" That reported response quickly became one of the most talked about parts of the story. What makes the reported reaction especially interesting is that many observers do not believe it came out of nowhere. According to the commentary surrounding the situation, this was not viewed as a sudden judgment made in a single moment. Instead, it was seen as the possible result of years of observation and reflection regarding how Diana's legacy has been discussed and presented in public. Charles Spencer has long been viewed as someone who takes his time before reaching major conclusions. Looking at his public record over the last 3 decades, many people describe a pattern of careful observation, followed by decisive action when he believes a situation calls for it. His famous 1997 speech remains one example often cited when discussing that approach. The same careful attitude has reportedly guided decisions involving Althorp and Diana's private archives for years. Because of that, if the reported 4-word response is accurate, many commentators believe it likely reflected a view that had been forming for quite some time, rather than a reaction based solely on a single proposal. Over the years, some royal commentators and observers of the Spencer family have pointed to what they describe as a pattern of strong visual references to Diana. Supporters often view these moments as tributes, while critics argue they became part of a larger and more consistent public narrative. The debate has continued for years, with both sides interpreting the gestures very differently. Many people trace the discussion back to the aquamarine ring worn at the evening reception following the 2018 royal wedding. The ring had belonged to Diana, and at the time, it was widely seen as a touching way to include Harry's mother in an important family milestone. On its own, the gesture was generally received positively and attracted warm reactions from many observers. However, critics say the references did not stop there. Over time, attention was drawn to other well-known pieces associated with Diana, including the Cartier tank watch, butterfly earrings, and gold bracelets. These were not viewed simply as jewelry choices by those commentators. Instead, they were seen as recognizable items closely connected to Diana's public image and personal style. Because many of these appearances happened during major public events, the comparisons often gained traction online and in the media. Photographs circulated widely, and discussions followed about whether the similarities represented occasional tributes or something more intentional and ongoing. According to critics, the distinction matters. A single tribute can mark a meaningful occasion or personal connection, but when references appear repeatedly over a long period, they can create a broader visual story in the minds of viewers. That is where much of the disagreement has centered, with supporters and critics reaching very different conclusions about what those choices represent. The conversation was not limited to fashion and jewelry either. Some commentators also pointed to similarities between major media interviews involving Meghan and Diana. In particular, the 2021 Oprah interview generated extensive discussion because of certain themes that observers compared to Diana's famous 1995 Panorama interview. Both interviews involved highly public conversations about personal struggles, media pressure, and experiences within royal life. Because of those overlapping themes, journalists and commentators spent years examining possible parallels. Some of those discussions came from critics, while others came from people who were generally sympathetic to Meghan's perspective. For Charles Spencer, however, the Panorama interview is often viewed through a very different lens. Unlike many members of the public, he has a deeply personal connection to the events surrounding Diana's life and legacy. As a result, comparisons involving that interview can carry a significance that goes far beyond ordinary public commentary and media analysis. Charles Spencer has spoken publicly over the years about the pain he associates with the circumstances surrounding Diana's 1900 Panorama interview. He has expressed deep concern about the way the interview was obtained and has discussed feelings of grief regarding the events that led up to it. Those views have been part of the public record for many years and remain an important factor when considering his perspective on matters connected to Diana's legacy. Because of that history, some commentators believe that seeing later interviews compared to Panorama may not have been viewed by him in the same way others saw it. While some people framed those comparisons as respectful parallels, reports and commentary have suggested that Charles Spencer may have viewed such comparisons through a much more complicated and personal lens. By 2025 and into 2026, observers increasingly pointed to visual and narrative similarities that they believed echoed well-known moments from Diana's public life. Certain professional photo shoots drew comparisons to iconic Diana portraits, while coverage of the Sussex story was sometimes framed around themes that critics argued invited audiences to think about Diana without making the comparison directly. Rather than stating the connection outright, some commentators argued that the messaging encouraged viewers to arrive at the comparison on their own. According to those observers, the effect built gradually over time through repeated imagery, recurring themes, and familiar story structures. From that perspective, Charles Spencer may have been forming opinions about these developments long before any reported documentary proposal reached his desk. The proposal itself did not necessarily create the debate. Instead, it reportedly brought an already existing discussion into a much more public spotlight. The practical consequences of the reported rejection could be significant. According to multiple industry reports, a major Diana-related anniversary project was viewed as one of the most valuable content opportunities still available to the Sussex media operation. Few stories attract worldwide interest on the scale of Diana's legacy, and the approaching 30th anniversary in 2027 represented a rare cultural moment with enormous public attention already built in. Prince Harry's participation alone would likely draw substantial interest. His personal connection to the story gives any project involving his mother a level of public curiosity that is difficult to replicate. However, many analysts believe Charles Spencer's cooperation would have elevated the project even further. A documentary supported by Spencer Family Archives, featuring access to private materials and carrying the visible participation of Diana's brother, would be seen by many as a major prestige production. It would signal that those closest to Diana believed the project was worthy of support and respectful of her memory. Without that backing, the project reportedly becomes something very different. Instead of being anchored by family participation and archival access, it would rely primarily on public materials and the perspectives of those involved, potentially changing how audiences, commentators, and industry observers view its authority and overall impact. Without family backing, a project carries a very different message. Instead of signaling that Diana's relatives support the story being presented, it can lead audiences to wonder whether those closest to her agree with the way events are being framed. In the documentary world, that distinction can be extremely important and can influence how a project is received by viewers, critics, and industry insiders alike. There is also the issue of the archives themselves, which goes far beyond simple prestige. Charles Spencer reportedly oversees access to private materials connected to Diana's life, including handwritten diaries, personal correspondence, and home video recordings that have never been fully released to the public. According to reports, access to some of these materials was viewed as a key part of the proposed project. The value of those archives is enormous. Previously unseen footage, private writings, or personal reflections from Diana would instantly make any documentary feel more exclusive and more significant. Audiences are naturally drawn to material they have never seen before, especially when it involves one of the most recognized public figures of the modern era. Without access to those private resources, a production would reportedly have to rely much more heavily on footage and materials that have already appeared in countless Diana documentaries over the past 3 decades. While those sources remain important, many commentators argue that they do not generate the same level of excitement as genuinely new discoveries. Another factor often mentioned by supporters of Charles Spencer's reported decision is privacy. Once personal documents, recordings, or handwritten notes are released into the public sphere, there is no way to reverse that process. Materials that were once deeply personal become part of the permanent public record. For some observers, that issue goes beyond entertainment or commercial value. They argue that preserving certain private aspects of Diana's life may be one of the last ways to protect parts of her story that were never intended for public consumption. From that viewpoint, keeping those materials secured at Althorp is not about withholding information. It is about maintaining a boundary between public history and personal privacy. The business side of the equation matters as well. In Hollywood and the wider media industry, perceptions can influence decisions. Producers, creative partners, and brands often evaluate projects based on reputation, potential controversy, and public reaction before becoming involved. According to commentators, the Spencer family's reported position would not prevent a documentary from being made. However, it could affect how the project is viewed and discussed. Questions may arise about authority, access, and whether the people telling the story have support from those most closely connected to Diana's legacy. There is also another layer to this situation that has attracted attention from royal observers. According to various reports and commentary over the years, Charles Spencer and Prince William are believed to share a stronger relationship than many people realize, adding another interesting dimension to the broader story and its potential implications. Prince William has long been known as someone who is highly protective of his mother's memory and public image. Royal reporting over the past 2 decades has frequently highlighted how seriously he takes matters connected to Diana's legacy. For him, discussions about how Diana's story is presented are not just historical debates, they are deeply personal issues that continue to matter today. At the same time, William does not have direct authority over independent media projects involving Diana's life. He cannot stop a family member from speaking publicly about her, nor can he simply block a documentary from moving forward. Those decisions are outside his control. What he can do, however, is maintain strong relationships with people who play important roles in preserving Diana's legacy, including members of the Spencer family. Because of those connections, some commentators have pointed to a natural overlap in priorities between William and Charles Spencer. Both have publicly demonstrated a strong interest in protecting Diana's memory, and both have been associated with efforts to ensure that her story is handled with care and respect. There has been no confirmed reporting showing that a specific conversation between William and Charles Spencer directly led to the reported decision surrounding the proposal. That distinction is important. However, many observers note that people who share similar concerns often arrive at similar conclusions without needing any formal coordination. According to reports and commentary, William has been concerned about the commercial use of Diana-related narratives, while Charles Spencer's reported reaction to the proposal has been interpreted by some as reflecting comparable concerns. Whether those views developed independently or through years of shared perspective The apparent alignment has become a major talking point in discussions surrounding the story. From a practical standpoint, this creates a difficult challenge for the Sussex operation. According to commentators, traditional media strategies may have limited impact when the criticism or resistance comes from Diana's own relatives rather than from outside institutions, political figures, or anonymous sources. That distinction changes the conversation dramatically. Critics can be challenged, and media narratives can be debated. But when concerns reportedly come from Diana's family, the discussion often carries a different level of emotional weight in the public eye. For Prince Harry, the situation may be especially sensitive. Many observers have pointed back to Charles Spencer's famous 1997 speech at Westminster Abbey, where he spoke passionately about Diana's sons and their future. That moment remains one of the defining public statements connected to Diana's funeral and legacy. Because of that history, some commentators view the reported decision through a different lens. Rather than seeing Charles Spencer as acting against Harry, they interpret his actions as consistent with the protective role he has publicly embraced for decades. From that perspective, supporters argue that he may believe he is continuing a responsibility he accepted nearly 30 years ago when he pledged to help safeguard Diana's memory and the values he believed she represented. Whether Prince Harry sees the situation in the same way is a separate question entirely. However, many commentators argue that it would be difficult to publicly present the reported decision as a personal attack. The discussion extends far beyond family dynamics and moves directly into the business realities of the entertainment industry. There is a broader industry signal here that many analysts have highlighted. The impact of a reported rejection would not necessarily be limited to a single documentary project. In Hollywood and across the global media landscape, perceptions can influence opportunities, partnerships, and future investments in significant ways. Creative talent often evaluates potential risks before joining a production. Brand partners examine whether a project aligns with their image and long-term goals. Investors and media executives also assess whether a content operation appears sustainable before committing resources. Because of that, major public developments can have effects that stretch well beyond one specific production. According to reports and commentary, if the brother of the central figure in a documentary publicly rejects or strongly criticizes its direction, industry observers are likely to take notice. Such developments can influence conversations about credibility, access, and overall public reception. Those factors become part of the wider assessment surrounding not only the project itself, but also the broader media brand connected to it. Some commentators have described the reported Spencer family position as an important indicator of how certain industry figures may view the Sussex brand moving forward. Whether that interpretation proves accurate remains to be seen, but it has become a major topic of discussion among royal watchers and entertainment analysts alike. Attention is now turning toward a larger question. Can future content projects succeed without relying heavily on connections to Diana's legacy? That issue has become increasingly central to conversations about the long-term direction of the Sussex media operation. Over the years, projects involving lifestyle programming, documentaries, and other entertainment ventures have received varying levels of public attention and commercial success. According to industry observers, the approaching 30th anniversary of Diana's death was viewed by many as a particularly significant opportunity because of the built-in global interest surrounding her story. If reports about the Althorp decision are accurate, that opportunity may now look very different. A Diana documentary supported by Spencer family participation would likely be viewed as a major prestige production with unique access and strong historical significance. Without that involvement, the project could face a different set of expectations and challenges. Whether Netflix or any other media company chooses to move forward under those circumstances remains an open question. But the bigger issue now being debated is whether the Sussex brand can continue building a long-term content strategy that stands independently, without Diana's legacy serving as its primary point of public interest. According to many observers, that is the question the reported Althorp decision has pushed directly into the spotlight. Because if the answer is no, then the consequences could stretch far beyond a single documentary project. The island at Althorp remains under Spencer family care, and the silence surrounding it remains firmly in their hands. Many observers believe that the promise Charles Spencer made during Diana's 1997 funeral continues to shape how he approaches decisions connected to her legacy today. And those 4 reported words, "Is this a joke?" have now become a major part of the public conversation surrounding the proposed project. Whether people agree with the reported reaction or not, it is a quote that has generated significant attention and is unlikely to disappear from the discussion anytime soon. According to commentators, Charles Spencer's approach has remained remarkably consistent over the years. Every major decision involving Diana's memory, private archives, and personal history has reportedly been handled with careful thought and deliberate judgment. If the reports are accurate, many believe this latest decision follows the same pattern that has defined his stewardship of Diana's legacy for nearly 3 decades. Of course, that does not mean future projects are impossible. The Sussex operation could still choose to mark the 2027 anniversary through a different documentary or media production. Such a project could draw from publicly available footage, historical records, and Prince Harry's own experiences and perspective. But many industry observers argue that it would be fundamentally different from a production supported by Althorp and the Spencer family archives. In the world of prestige documentaries, access and credibility can play a huge role in shaping public perception. If Althorp remains absent from the project, that absence may become part of the story itself. Critics, supporters, journalists, and viewers would likely continue discussing not only what was included, but also what was left out and why. For that reason, the reported rejection could remain attached to the project long after its release. Every review, comparison, and debate may revisit the same question: what might the documentary have looked like if access to Althorp and the Spencer archives had been granted? And now the question turns to you. Was Charles Spencer right to reportedly keep those doors closed? Or should Prince Harry have been given complete freedom to tell his mother's story in his own way without needing family approval? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and share it with others who follow royal news and media stories.